Hello, everybody, and good Saturday afternoon. Hope everybody's having a great weekend so far. And I did something today. First, went and got my first haircut this year. I think it might have been the first one I've had professionally in a year. Do it at least once a year, whether I need to or not. So today we're going to look at how to maximize the material test tool in Lightburn. The thumbnail for today's video was stop asking people for their settings. I've told you time and time before that my settings are not necessarily going to be your settings, and everybody's laser is different. Cleanliness, power settings, or the actual power of the laser. Yeah, we both had a 10-watt laser when they were new, but how many hours have I got on mine versus how many hours you got on yours, and what's its actual output? And the atmospheric conditions and geographic locations play a factor on your laser's ability to cut and engrave. Because when you're engraving, you're cutting. You're just not cutting all the way through. You're just cutting the surface, burning and combusting that top layer. And that's what I'm going to talk about today is I've got these all over my desktop. There's one. There's two. 3, 4. I've been doing this lasering now for over 2 years. 5, bunches. And I never stopped testing. And if we look here at this, these are 4 different test pieces, and they're all out of the 3mm material. But this one was a test piece out of something different. That was the cedar. And in fact, I'm going to show you how to do this as well, because I was like, what is this? Cedar. But if I would have just read it right across the top there, and it's out of focus because I've got the cheap camera. Cedar picket, 10-watt, intervals and number of passes, and I can see all that on my actual test material. I'm going to show you how to set that up so that when you've done this and you've got it laying on your desktop, or you're actually better than I am, and you organize your test pieces, they'll be labeled is what they are. And let's see here. Well, and after I go over this and show you what I do and why I do what I do when I do what I do, we'll do a general Q&A and ask and try to answer any questions anybody's got, either regarding the testing, or any other Lightburn issues you've got. If you have a Lightburn file that you are struggling with right now, and you would like me to take a look at it and answer any questions here in the stream, take this time right now before we jump in and get started. Email me that file at hobowithwood@gmail.com, hobowithwood@gmail.com, and I'll open it up, take a look at it, and even if necessary, send you a link so you can jump in here on the stream and we can dialogue. We can dialogue right here, and everybody can see it, and there won't be no texting. And even if you don't want to be on camera, you don't have to be on camera. You can turn your camera off or point it at the ceiling if you don't know how to turn the camera off, and we can just talk to each other instead of back and forth with messages. I hate typing, and that way, it's for me, it's so much easier and simpler to converse or dialogue. All right, so this week I did get the 3 other materials on the website for the 5x7 plaques. I got basswood up, walnut, and maple, hard maple. If you didn't see this week's video, oh boy, I won't be doing any more hard maple. Not if I can help it. I think they call it hard maple because it's hard on your tools. That was a lot of work to get that process down to the finished piece that I wanted it to be. But in addition to getting all the plaques processed and on the website, I took the time to do test materials and test pieces. And this one is a final piece. This was a piece of the waste. And I used the waste material to do test like this one. Or I got bunches of tests, doing all kinds of tests. These, and I've got close-ups of this I'm going to show you. But this was 10 watt, this was 30 watt, and these are over here. These were a bunch of different cut tests, and then a final cut test here. But this was about the engraving and not about testing for the plaques. So once I did this, I took and found what I felt like was the best outcome, and then got a new piece of scrap and did the same test again, and then did an engraving showing the settings that I felt were the optimal settings for this material. Now, as I just stated, this was my test, what I felt was the best settings for me for this material on that day in those environmental conditions. And it should not be used as a Bible, but as a possible starting point for you. But if you're not familiar with where this test is at and how to set the test up, that's what we're going over in this live stream. Let's see here. Looking for Three Rusty Nails had a question. I don't know if that was for y'all or for me, but have any of you engraved ironwood with a diode? Did it come out looking good? I'm not even familiar with ironwood. That's a new one on me. Just scrolling down through here looking for any questions. Terry's, is anyone else having trouble searching for old videos? And Terry's already said he's learned 3 new things. That was before I ever went live. And that's probably maybe the 3 things he learned this week. Terry and I connected online in the studio this week a couple times, helping with different issues and problems. I'm happy to do that anytime for anybody. It's not something I say, oh, need an appointment and it's going to cost you $25 an hour. I don't do that. Did I enlist? No, I did not enlist. I don't get a haircut often. One, it's extremely hard for me to justify that expense. I've got shears and clippers, and once in a while, if I get where I'm just getting too frustrated, I'll just buzz it myself real quick. But this is my favorite cut if I'm going to have a cut, because it can grow quite a while now before I really have to start looking bad. I was looking pretty shaggy the other day, and I was like, man, I almost hate to do a video, but got to do what you got to do. And I was this close. Yeah, close to just shaving it all off, because I've done that, several times in the past. And the only problem with shaving it is when I shave my hair off, I bump my head a whole lot, because this right here is, it's sensitive. The hair lets me know, oh, you're getting close to something. Shave your hair off. You don't know you're getting close to something until you done knocked yourself in the head. But I did not shave it because I'm like, okay, I think there's already enough bald-headed guys with goatees on YouTube talking about lasers. So I didn't bother shaving it. I didn't want anybody going, oh, looky. So I just went back to the flat top. It's cool this time of year. And like I said, it allows room to grow. Laser a hole in the top corner, then use a zip tie to hold them on a tie. Oh, there you go. Yep. That way you can organize them. Yep. That's pretty slick, and And what I could see doing there is if I've got different species, and for anybody that's not following, it's like I got here's 4 pieces with different of the same material with different test cuts, different test patterns. And for whatever reason, I decided I want to keep all 4 of them. Bob's saying, hey, laser a hole in the top corner and just put a zip tie. And I can see, especially for those with the same material, you organize and put all those together. And then you got just a deck you could flip through. That's a pretty cool idea. Yeah, that's pretty smart. Pretty smart. I have a box. Each laser for previous. I have a box by each laser for previous material test. Yep. Yeah. I wished I could say I was that organized, but I'm not. But I can see quickly organizing them by material and grouping them together like that. That's a pretty cool idea. Your test piece says millimeters a second. Is that what you use? No. I don't know why I said millimeters a second. Or is that what I use? No, I use. Wait a minute. You done got me confused. Settings. Ba, ba, ba. You know, my very, very first laser, which I hate to even mention the brand, it used no, I use millimeters a minute. But the very first laser I got, and a lot of you use, and if you use it, you know, for whatever reason, that one brand, they use millimeters per second. And I think I just got confused. Yeah, I use millimeters per minute. Did I say that on that? It sure does. I screwed up. There's what he's talking about right there. For whatever reason, I put on there, right there, millimeters per second. It's millimeters per minute. Oh, this brain is, it's an 8-cylinder firing on 7 most of the time. Do you have any videos or plan to have videos about proper finishing steps such as paint, fill? What order do you do things for filling, sealing steps, and time? Maybe. I use as far as products go, I use Rust-Oleum spray paint on just about everything. Rust-Oleum paint and Rust-Oleum lacquer. I used to use the triple thick a lot, but I found that it takes too long to cure for me, and sometimes it didn't even get, if I didn't let it cure long enough between each of the coatings, it would stay really soft for too long. But it's funny, John, that you bring that up because I'm going to talk about that after we do the material test, because one of the plaques that I have available this week are the walnut, and the walnut is well, here's one of the test pieces I did. I boogered up the piece when I was miter or joining the edges and getting everything, and so I made this a test piece. And the walnut is nice and pretty, but it doesn't show the engraving very, very well unless you do something really big and bold. But what I found is good on this walnut is to use it for color fill. And so I've got a piece that I did the color fill on that I'll show you here in a few minutes, and we'll talk about the steps that I use to do that. I'm just trying to get through the questions, and then we'll jump over to the material testing. Every time I get a new batch of birch plywood in, I do a material test because they're not consistent. Yeah, I've not had too much problem by staying with the same manufacturer, the Freiler. I've not had a huge variance in that at all. So I feel pretty good about this, my same settings with the birch. But I'm here now, I'm bringing in all these new materials: the Osage orange, the Purple Heart, the what else did I do last week? I can't even remember now. But now with the maple, the walnut, and I was extremely impressed. Have the dude, right here. This is the basswood. I could not believe, and again, I screwed up. I got millimeters a second, but this is millimeters a minute. And I'll need to put that in the description that I screwed that up on the website. But this is basswood. And you guys, I've used basswood. But the majority of you probably have used the 2 and 3 millimeter basswood plywood. And I think that stuff's garbage, junk. That is a solid inch of basswood. Solid, it's softwood, but it's solid wood. No, you see the grains there. But the contrast that I got from that was incredible. It looked really, really good. And when you put a finish on it, it looks as good as some of the maple does. Let's see here. Looking at questions. Okay, good. No, Ed's got a question. How do you export the test grid so it can be used on a different computer? I don't follow you. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but does the other computer not have Lightburn on it? Don't know. And we got comments here. I'm not sure if you can, unless bundle function, dragons, highlight your test, then go to file and save. You can save the test file, and I'll show you all that in the tool. And that might be what you could do. Like they're saying, save it, and then you email that file. But if you're emailing that file to a computer that has Lightburn on it, and then plus what you're getting ready to see and learn here, you may discover that what you're asking is something you don't even need to do. Because you can save these files and just have them that you can just pull them up. You don't have to recreate it every single time. So we're gonna jump over and take a look. So I don't have to repeat it on the second one. So you have different. Now I think I'm beginning to follow you. You have different computers that control different lasers. Is that what you got going on, Ed? Yeah, I didn't like the basswood plywood. I don't use it at all anymore. It's too, like you say, it's too fragile. It's like almost like balsa wood, and it's a waste of money as far as I'm concerned. But I was extremely happy with these. The plaques, I've milled them down to 12 mil. Even if you have two identical lasers, you can still get different results, even with the same material. Oh yeah. Yep. Different, depending on the material, different grain consistencies, different hardnesses and densities of the wood. How dry is one versus the other, how green is the other. You can have variables that affect your results. All right, I'm going to mark the spot here, and we're going to jump over here to Lightburn and look at this material tool. All right. spots marked. Let's highlight this, get rid of it. Oh, wrong one, dum-dum. And actually, I'm going to do this, delete. I'm going to show you the process here on that test piece I did. Let's see, downloads. Move over here. And I say this a lot too. If you've watched enough of Clack's videos, he'll pick his piece up, get it off the laser. He says, "I'll be right back." And he goes over and gets his sander, and you hear it, bzzz, and he sands it clean, and it cleans everything up, makes it nice and crisp. And I do the same thing. I will sand my material, but what I'm looking for when I do my test pieces, my test grids, I'm looking for what gives me the best result and requires the least amount of sanding. And I want to show you these grids before and after sanding, and the 10 watt and the 30 watt, and show you some up close images here. That's better than me trying to hold them up to the camera and show you what's going on. So let me get these pulled up here. This one is the 10 watt. That's good. It's good. Come on. Yep. That's one of them. And the 10 watt. And come on. 10 watt basswood. Yep, that's the other. All right. So pop and switch. So what we have here, and I've got the up here, it says Rolly 10 watt basswood. And I used the default settings in the test before I did anything. And I knew that this one, no, I didn't even use, I didn't use default. I went with a minimum speed of 700 millimeters a minute and a max of 18,000. And then this is the same power settings, 10 watt basswood, but instead of doing 10 watt, instead of starting from 10 to 100, I went 20 to 100, and I went from 1,000 to 6,500 instead of this all the way up here to 18. So I use this piece right here to determine what my optimal settings was going to be, because all of this up here is a lot of wasted information. There's so little variance in this that the information I gleaned from this is totally useless. It did me no good whatsoever. And on the 10 watt setting, or the 10% power on the 10 watt, there was hardly any output whatsoever until you got really, really slow. So I said, all right, so that one's got a pretty good variable on 20 watt, and I'm only going to go up to 6,500. So I said that we're going to do 20 watt. And then went ahead and stayed with up to a maximum of 100 watt. So this 20 to 100, 1,000 to 65 is right in, oops, didn't mean to do that. Just this 4 rows right here, 4 by 9 got turned into a 10 by 10. And now you can see it fades away to nothing, and it burns it to a crisp down here. So I've got a complete range of what that laser would do in a 10 watt, and anywhere from 1,000 to 6,500. And then let's see here, 10. I did the same thing with the 30 watt. But before I do that, let me show you these same two. There's 10, and there's is that 20? I'm on. Yeah. All right. So there and there. So those are the same two tests, but after I sanded them. So now that I've cleaned them up, I can really see there. This was the one that went all the way up to 18,000 millimeters a minute. But this one was my optimum piece, 1,000 millimeters a minute to 6,500. So there it fades. Once I sanded it and cleaned it up, all those faded away. That little bit that's going on over here got all sanded off and cleaned up. So now you can see there's nothing all the way to burnt to a crisp. And I've got a cleaned up, and it looks good. And I can see what gives me a deep, dark pocket and any of the variations in between. And that's all 10. And actually, that one's a 30 watt, but same deal. Go away, go away. All right. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the tool and make sure I've not missed anything yet. Let's see here. Nope. All right. So now let's go into Lightburn and open up the tool in Lightburn and how you get those settings. First, you need to know your laser. What are your laser's capabilities? What's your maximum speed? There's no sense in putting in there, 18,000 millimeters a minute when your laser will only do 12,000. So you need to know what your laser's capabilities are and your minimum maximum speeds, or your max speeds anyway. So that way you're not, because I think that it'd probably generate the test, but if you're given 10 rows and you tell it to go from 1,000 millimeters a minute to 18,000, but your laser caps out at 12, then those last 6 will probably output, but it'll be all exact same stuff because you've got it at max speed. And so you've just wasted a whole bunch of time and material trying to figure out. So know what your laser's capabilities are. And then to find the tool, you go into laser tools and Lightburn and material test right here. It's laser tools menu and material test. And when you open that, it's going to give you this menu here. And it's going to give you X and Y. And your Y is on the left here. X is on the right. How many counts do you want as far as in your test grid? So if on this test grid, and generally I do, not always, but generally in order to get a full spectrum, I'll do a 10 by 10 test grid, 10 squares across and 10 squares up. And that's what that's asking there. 10 count and 10 count. Then this one is your speed. Now you can change the parameters, and I don't mess with this because when I'm doing this, I'm looking for my best speed and power settings for when I'm engraving. Typically, I do not use the material test for finding my cutting speeds and powers. I'll talk about that in a second because that's what I've done over here on this, was testing to find speeds and powers for cutting. But you can use this same material test for finding cutting. Yes, it will still generate a test, just run, yeah. And counts means rows and columns, correct. How many rows and how many columns? And your X and Y. So back over here. So that's your counts, rows and columns, speed and power. And then here's your maximum speed, your minimum and your maximum, and then your height and width. Height and width is how big do you want your pieces to engrave. This one I did 5. That's a 5 by 5. And here, much smaller piece, and I did the squares at probably 3 mil. Usually I'll do, because I want it, because the grains of your wood, especially if you're doing hardwood, the grains in your hardwoods can really affect how well it burns and engraves. So don't try to do too small of a test grid when you're doing tests on hardwoods. You will not get a consistent result. So stay with a little bit larger on your hardwoods. But that's a 5 mil 10 by 10, and that one's 3 mil 10 by 10. And you can see the difference in the sizes of the outcomes. But from what I've learned with my laser, 600 millimeters a minute, I don't do anything as slow as 600 millimeters a minute. So I typically bump that up to at least 700 or even possibly 1,000 for my minimum speed, and then set my max speed. And the more you do of these, the more tests you do, you're going to start to discover and learn your laser's capabilities, even when it's a species you're not familiar with. You just kind of start to see, okay, well, my laser is really not going to do much of have an effect using the 10 watt, anything above 12,000 millimeters a minute. So you can do, and if your laser is fast enough, has the capability, you can go test it. But you just start to learn, okay, on the 10 watt setting, I probably don't need to go any more than 12,000 millimeters a minute. That just comes with experience. And the more you do of these, the more testing you'll do, the less you'll find that it's necessary, or you'll find that you get a more optimum test result with fewer tests with the more you do them. So you set your minimum speed and your maximum speed, and you don't have to do a square. You could do 3 by 10. You could make it rectangular if you want, but that's going to affect the size of your material test. And then this right here, Y center and X center, that is telling you where the center of your test material is going to be located on your work area. So right now, if I preview this, I can hit preview and I can see an outcome. And there I can see all my traversal moves. I'm going to turn those off. And then I'm going to make this full screen and I'm going to zoom out. And now there is the center, or the green outline. I hope you can see it on your screen, but that's putting that test pattern in the very center of my work area. Show of hands, how many people work from the center of your work area? Not me. And this is only something that I've learned in the past few months. And I found that it allowed, by learning how to do what I'm about to show you, it allowed me to get those nice 4 test patterns arranged nice and neatly on one piece of material without ever having to move the material. The material is sitting on the work bed, and I'm able to put the test patterns where I want them and keep them nice, neat, and organized. Let's see here. I see question marks. Where did I see them? There they are. Larry's question. You mentioned 1,000 millimeters a minute as your minimum speed. I'm assuming you're talking about engraving. And that's all I'm talking about. Engraving is all I'm talking about pretty much for this. Because cutting, you kind of get a little bit familiar with your laser. You know what your laser is going to do. But when you've got new thicknesses and a brand new material, then you may be required to do some test cuts and figure out what's going to do to get your test. And you can use this material pattern to do, and I've seen lots of guys do it, where you'll see a grid like this, and the top or the lower quadrant down here is all cut out, and none of these are cut out, but you can see where it engraved them. But I don't bother doing that. I simply just know it's okay. If I'm doing 10 watt, typically I can cut out at around 420 to 500 millimeters a minute at 100% power, and depending on the material, 3 to 5 passes, and it's going to cut out for me. So today we're talking about engraving. I'm not talking about any of the cut settings, just engraving, because that's where people, I get it a lot of times, and you see it in people's, well, I used borax to get a really dark engraving, or I used this technique to get a dark engraving. You don't have to do all that. All that time and prep work, that's time spent that you could be engraving. It's like, well, I got a really dark result and it didn't take too long using the borax. Well, once you take the time that it took you to create the solution, make the solution, mix it up, and then get it coated on there, and get did you get a good even coating on there? You know, that because if you don't, that can result in a darker area here than over here. So I'm looking for the ability to get a deep dark engraving without using anything on the material at all. And what can I do that's going to give me a consistent dark outcome using just the speed and power of the laser? And that's why I do all of these tests when I do them, is I'm looking for the optimum speed and power. I have been arguing for ages to have it work from origin rather than center. Their argument is too many don't frame their material test. Yeah, and I can see their point, because I'm going to show you here the problem with doing what I'm about to do. Where this is a problem, if you were to use it from origin, that could be an issue too. Or origin would not work. And I'll show you that. All right, so back over here to Lightburn. So there's the test pattern in the center of the workbed. Well, this is my Y center and my X center. And if you look right down here, that tells you the output size of the material test. But I want you to watch. Up here's the title. Let's go back to the preview screen. Preview. Right here, it's showing you your line intervals, number of passes, your speed and power settings. But if I come up here and put in a title, come on, let's make it capitalized. There we go. And now I go back and look at the preview. It'll put the title up there too. So you can put in there your the laser you're using. And if you're using one of the rollies and you have a switchable laser from 10 watt to 30 watt, put in there the rolly 10 watt. And then, you know, what is the material? You can label it there, like you've seen what I did in those photographs. And that's where you put that in the title up there. But when you do that, it changes the size of your output. So I went from 82, there's with the title, I'm at 82.5 by 100. Take the title out of there. Well, I say it did. Maybe it's, let's see, more preview. Pretty sure it does. There's that preview without it, but it didn't change the output size there. But here is the, with this information from the output, and let's just cancel that and bring it back up again. Window or laser tools, material test. Yeah. I think that changed. There's, let's look at it now from the very first time. There's 82.1 by 92 and test preview 82 and 92. 82 and 99. Yeah, that's what I thought. When you put the title on there, it changes your output size. Now, when I took that title off, for whatever reason, it didn't change it back. But when you know what your output size is going to be, and you don't want it to be in the middle of your material, if I see here it's 82 by 99, then I'm going to come over here to my center point for my output. And for the Y, I'll put, in fact, let's do this. I'm gonna try and show you I'm gonna try to get it as close to origin as possible and why that's not good. So what I'm gonna do is, if that's the center point, I need to divide it in half both ways, and then that should put the output there at the origin. Should. But here goes that 4-letter word, math. So output size is 82 on the X. Half of 82 is 41. So let's say 41 and 99.3. We'll just say 50. And preview. I got a warning. One or more shapes are crossing the edge of the machine workspace and will not be sent. I don't want to continue. So where is that at? Let's just tell that 52 on the Y and preview. Still got a problem. Let's make that 45 and preview. And there. So that's got it moved down there to the bottom, but it was not liking those parameters I put in there. And this is part of what I wanted to show you. If I turn on the traversal moves here, see how close it is. And that's why I was getting the warning, because those coordinates I was putting in there, it should have allowed me to put it down there because I was putting it at the halfway point on the X and the Y. But if I was to have that positioned all the way over that traversal move at moving at 1800 millimeters a minute, that overscanning would have been out of bounds. And it would have caused an error and not output that once it would have ran so far. And then once the overscanning ran into your boundary, it would have stopped. It would no longer output your test. So Origin would work as long as it took into, but because depending on what your speeds are going to be, your overscanning and your percentage is going to change. So it's just saying absolute, put it Origin. I can see why they say, yeah, we're not going to do that. Too many variables, change where it needs to be, put it in the center screen and they can't screw it up. But if they move it, then if they're smart enough to move it and know how it works, they can figure out where it needs to be placement wise. So go back here. There's the preview. So by changing your center on your Y and X, you can move it from the center screen down to the bottom corner. Now, if I did this test, and I've got that one right here in that bottom corner of my test material, and my test material is large enough to put, like I did there, I did four tests on that piece. I know what my output size is, and I know where the center of it's at. When I'm ready to do the next one, and this is where it's simple 4-letter word math, so easy, but I struggled with it. I've already done my output for one test. Now, without moving my material, I just want to move my next test over. I've not changed the size of anything. I've just changed my parameters, the speed and the power. So the output size is going to be the same. I just need to move it over. Then I'm going to take, and what is it's 100 mil. Then I'm just going to come right here. That if my output size is 100 mil on the, let's see, output is, no, I'm sorry, over here and see the fact that they've got the X's on the right and not on the left, because usually you got X on the right and Y on the left, but for whatever reason, they've got it in the test pattern inverted there. So the output size is 82. This was 45, and I add 82 to it, 47 plus, and I'm not even going to hurt my head right now, because I'll hurt my head. 82 plus 45, it's 127 mil. Then I change my Y to 127 mil and preview and look at the full screen. Look there. So there's my first outputs over here. It just moved that second one right over here beside of it. So I can change the parameters of my test material. And when you set up your test parameters and all your values, and then you hit the start button here on your test grid, you hit start, that screen doesn't go away. That will stay there. None of that goes bye-bye. It's going to stay right there on top of while you're running your test grid. Then when you see what your results are and you're like, okay, I'm going to tweak this, tweak that, then all you got to do is go right back into that screen and make the changes you want to, then move it over the exact width of your X parameters there, which in this case it was 82, move it over 82 millimeters, and it's going to just move it over and do the next one right beside of it in the next empty space. I've been arguing with I've been arguing for ages to have it work from origin. Their arguments, okay, we talked about that. And then Chris says, are you going to cover running test out of focused for combo of depth and darkness? Wasn't planning to, because my videos can be really long in the teeth, really long in the tooth. And I'm trying to get and because there are a lot of things that you can do with this, and I'm gonna go over the material settings and the text settings and the border settings, and then there is where I will sometimes set up my material settings to run for crosshatch and line after fill. So instead of just a simple engrave, move over, engrave, move over, I might do a crosshatch where I'm on the X and then on the Y and then do a line after fill and then do the next square. And those tests can take some time, but that's where I really see a difference. But I wanted to get people who aren't familiar with the test comfortable with using the test and understanding how those settings work before I start overcomplicating the thing. That's why I wasn't even going to talk about cuts. I was going to talk just about engraving in this video. If you run a save test file, it does not save title. Oh, it doesn't save the title? That's weird because that's weird. But if this, and for grins and giggles, I'm going to, we'll do this as live 05/03/2025. So there's my title, and now I want to save this test. Right there's your disk for saving. Save current values as a preset. So if I save that and save the preset name, live 05-03- come on, and save it, that saves it in the presets. And now if I look over here at my downloads, here's all my different presets that I've saved at different times. So let's in fact, we're going to close this, go bye-bye, go back into laser tools, material test, go and grab my presets and pull up the live. And sure enough, the title is not there. The presets are there, but the title's not there. Well, that's kind of screwy. Well, actually, I can see it not saving the title because because when I'm doing the title, I'm telling it which laser and what power and what species. And I might want to save that parameters like, okay, well, I've, like I was saying earlier, you get familiar with your laser and you know that this is generally the best. It's like I can engrave at speeds much less than 1,000, but I've found that even at speeds under 600, at 10% up to 100%, that whole line just gets burnt up. So typically now when I do a test, I don't do anything less than 600. I don't do 500. I don't do any. In fact, the ones I've done here, I think everything was at 1,000 at its lowest possible speed. And you begin to learn, okay, if I'm using my 10-watt setting, typically I start to lose any output or seeing any engraving at speeds over 12,000. So now I know that, all right, I'm going to go from 1,000 to 12,000. But the species are always going to change. So I could set up and have a preset saved so I don't have to set that up every time. I don't have to go in and change it from its defaults to 1,000 and 12,000 because my presets got it already. So you can save the presets, but it won't save your title. But that just gives you a chance to edit it for what you're testing and what settings and what material. So I can see it not saving the title, because that is something that's going to change, where the parameters may not change. I may want to have a parameter that's just my personal default, and then I can edit the title as I want. But let's look at the rest of these settings in the material test. You've got down here, and these are relatively new for Lightburn. This one is especially the edit border setting. This will allow you to actually cut out the individual test once it's complete. So if you didn't want to have a big piece like this that's got 4 separate pieces on it, then you can set that border setting to where once it completes the test, it'll go in and cut out each individual, or cut out that test once it's finished. And I use that when I want to have these that I'll start cutting a hole in and putting a ring on, and organizing them. Let's see here. Looking for any questions or comments before I go. Nope. All right, good. All right, marking my spot. All right, now back over here. So material setting. If we open that up, you get the same cut settings editor that you see all the time. And this one, you're not going to use much until you start really wanting to do advanced things with your test, because your test is going to be running the variables of your speed and power. So you're not going to set speed and power here, because that's what the test is doing. But you can change your line interval or your lines per inch, either one. And for those who aren't aware, if we've got some really, really elementary or newbies in here, these are linked together. They're one and the same. So if I wanted to do, right now I'm doing a 0.08 or 317.5 lines per inch. This is just the metric way of saying the same thing, and this one's an imperial. So if I want to go from 318 lines per inch to 254 lines per inch, see, it changes the line interval up there. That's doing 1/10 of a millimeter for each line, or 250 lines per inch. That's how many times that laser is going to engrave per inch. So it's going to put 254 lines in every inch. Knowing what your spot size is on your laser, most of them say they're a 0.08. And another video, your spot size is not round. It's going to be ovaloid at best. So if you are doing your scan on the X at a 0.08, and you do a scan on a Y on a 0.08, they're not going to be the same because your spot size is a little bit different. If your spot size is large or wider than it is tall, then when you start scanning on that Y, it's going to actually be overlapping itself. If you follow what I'm saying, because it's not a circle. It's not. But you're not using this cut settings for anything except to, if you want to do the crosshatch I was talking about earlier, you could do crosshatch. You could turn that on. And now you're going to do X and Y. And if you want to increase your overscanning, or turn your overscanning off, that anything below this line up here, anything other than your speed and power, you can control. You can make it a line, and say, okay. And then when you go look at your preview, that's what you get. You just get a line. You don't get a complete feel. So you don't, if you're, and that cut, let's see, cut there. Well, oh, that's how you generate the cut test. Wasn't going to talk about that, but here we are. If you don't want to do an engraving test, you want to find out what your cutting ability is. You do the same thing. You set up your variables and your speed and your power, and you change that to a line instead of an engrave, and it's going to cut those out if you've got it running slow enough. But if you're needing to do multiple passes, if you're doing the cut test, well, you increase your passes right here as well. So if you want to do 4 passes at your variable speeds, you leave it in line mode, increase your number of passes, and it's going to do a cut test for you. Put it back in fill mode, and now you're going to be getting an engraving. So you can change your total number of passes, change it to crosshatch or just a regular scan angle. And in fact, if you wanted to see the difference between an X engraving and a Y axis engraving, then you would change your scan angle right here from 0 to 90. And right here it's showing you it's scanning X, change that to a 90, and now it's moving up and down on your Y. So that's what this cut settings are for, is to set up the basic information, your lines per inch, your scan angle, the number of passes, crosshatch or not. And that's all done through your edit materials settings. Before I move on to the next one, I'm just looking for questions and comments. Comments from Chris. I might invest in some letter spikes for holding tests with. You got a lot of tests, and folks, I'm telling you right now, if you want, and we were all rookies at one time, but if you want to advertise yourself as a rookie, keep asking, what are your settings? What are your settings? What are your settings? Because once you get to know your laser, you're not going to worry about what everybody else's settings are, because you're going to know eventually you'll learn that it worked great for him, but it didn't work for me. Material test libraries that come with the Rolly and the Dimitri's library is phenomenal. It's really, really good. And but it's a good chance it's just going to be a springboard. So we're going to start. Did that work for you? No. Well, then this tweak it a little bit like that. But those are good for testing. For cutting, I should say. I've really been tickled with the cut settings in Dimitri's library. I've not had much issue there. But because I'm what he considers to be a dark engraving, not nearly dark enough for me. I want to see black. I want it to be a really dark engraving. And on the test results I've done when I use my material library that comes with the Rolly, I've not had a dark engraving that was acceptable for me using their settings. So that's why I would do tests, so I can find out what do I need to do to get the result that I'm looking for. So that was the material settings. Now let's look at the blue one, the edit text settings, and what is it and why is it different? So the blue tab here is your edit text settings. That is for the text that's going to be around your test. And I didn't go back to line mode or fill mode. Let's put that in fill. Say, okay, preview. And turn off my traversal moves. There we go. All right, now. So all of the text up here, this line interval, the number of passes, your speed settings, and your power settings, those are going to be engraved using this text setting. That that output to engrave that text is not controlled by the variable text part of the test tool. So here, for me, I have found that typically around 700, well, I take that back. Anywhere from 600 to 700 at 20% power with a 10-watt laser gives me a really, really dark engraving. So that's right here. I've got it at 1,000 millimeters a minute and 20% power. But the one thing I do with my text output is I don't do just the engraving. I do a sublayer on it, because if I'm engraving really, 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 really small, in fact, let's just show you this. Downloads, where are you at? There you are. Downloads. And this one. And this one. And pop and switch. All right, so these are two tests that I ran on the basswood. This is the Rolly with the 10-watt. This is the Rolly with the 30-watt. Because it's a 30-watt setting, it's got a larger spot size. And then you start to see the letters running together. Here, they're a little more crisp. And this is after sanding. So I've sanded some of it away. But see how this is a lot more legible than this? Well, the 10-watt setting would not be that legible if I didn't do the line after fill. When I do just the regular fill passes, it's there, but it doesn't have any definition. So on my text editor settings, I have my fill mode where I'll do, like I'm using 1,000 millimeters a minute and 20% power. But then I add, in fact, I'll take this off. So there's what you might see when you first open yours. But then I'll come over here and click this add button or the plus button and add a sublayer. And then I'm going to leave it in line mode, and I'm going to set it at a little bit slower speed than what the engraving was. And I'll do it at a little bit less power. Slow it down and lower the power a little bit. And then what that does is once it engraves, and I see preview, pop that up there. And when you do your text, it's going to engrave your text first, right? And then it'll do your test mode. But there, once it completes all of the text, right there, after it puts in the S for speed, it's done with the text. But up here's the cursor for the laser, and if you watch it, I'm going to hit play. There it is, play. And we'll slow it down. In fact, you can even see it there. See how it's going around the letters and around the engraving? And you can even see it in the screen, how much darker it gets and how much more legible it's getting. So by doing that line after fill, it makes those letters crisp and pop. Let's see here. Got that. Will Lightburn limit the lines per inch based on your laser's ability? Lightburn won't, but your laser will, right? Because you can tell the Lightburn to do, well, I don't know what, I don't quite, can you, your laser doesn't have a limitation on your lines per inch, does it? Because if you're, this is me speaking from the way I understand how it works. I don't know this to be scientific, absolute, positively true. And then Chris might comment in here and tell me, no, that's not how it works. But I think of my lines per inch. If I did 1 line per inch and I used the microscope to see what that spot size was, how big was it? For giggle sakes, let's just say it was 0.1. All right, that was what the line per inch, the size of it, 0.1 millimeter. Well, if I've got 0.1 millimeter, that's 254 lines per inch. But if I tell Lightburn to use an LPI of a 0.05, then depending on your stepper motors and how small of an area it can move at a time, so there will be your limitations. What is the mechanical limitations of it? And I don't know. But if I went from 254 lines per inch to 508 lines per inch, well, it's going to overlap every other, or it's going to engrave a line and then only move up half of it. So the bottom half will be overlapped. Move up again, it's going to be overlapping again. So it's going to be overlapping that engraving all the way up. I guess your stepper motors have limitations. I don't know. I've never looked into that. I've just said, okay, well, if I want to overlap my laser, then I will increase, my lines per inch. And if I went and I think typically 500 lines per inch, I think is what I've seen now that I think about it, is about the highest your laser's capabilities are, I think. Anything other than that, over that is a waste, I think. Tell me if I'm wrong there, Chris. Can most of them go up to 500 lines per inch? I think. And ellipse, I don't think. And if you're talking about the size or the shape of the spot, it's not really elliptical, because your spot is in no way, shape, fashion, or form round. It doesn't have anything, doesn't have any radiuses on it at all. Your output from your diode laser is a square. And because you've got multiple squares focused together to one point, they become more of an ovaloid, but because none of it is round or elliptical at all. And that's why I use the term ovaloid instead of elliptical, because there are no radiuses on it. It kind of sort of begins to look like one after they're focused together, but it's not, they're not round. As an advanced learner, I would still ask about setting, not because I would use them, but gets me in the ballpark. Yeah. Possibly. I just don't depend on, and in two, what if they're another newbie? Or if they are a newbie and they tell you what their settings were, but they didn't realize they had overscan, or not even, they didn't realize they had crosshatch turned on. So they just tell you, yeah, we used 100 millimeters a minute and 10% power, but they forgot to tell you they used line after fill and crosshatch. And so I don't even talk to people about their settings. And typically I don't share my settings. The only reason I did it and I screwed this up by putting in millimeters per second instead of millimeters per minute. The only reason I shared this is because this was a new material that a lot of you probably, maybe you haven't worked with. And if you buy it from hobowithwood.com, you don't want to waste one of the plaques without having some, and you don't want for a test piece. So by having this as a stepping stone, then you can try it. And then if you don't move it, then you can adjust it and see what you get. But yeah, that's the only reason I even shared my settings this time. Someone else's settings can be a problem. Pine Groves in the U.S. has a different grain. Yeah. It's a good stepping stone, but other people's can be yeah. I have a question. If a Rolly MK2 and I have a Rolly MK2, and sometimes I want to cut or engrave like the same object twice on the machine. The first time I do it, it comes out nice, but the second time I do it, it does not, I guess. I, I'm not following you completely. It does not cut or engrave like the first time I did it. Well, that can be a variable in the material. It could be a slight, if you're talking about you did the job and then you come back 2 days later and you're going to do the job again and you have a different result. Well, that could be a difference in the material. It could be a slight difference in the way you had it focused, where you had it focused. There's because it's not just laser and power settings. There's all kind of factors that go into it that could change your output from one day to the next. As Mr. Matzik used to tell me in my senior class of computer programming, more often than not, it's cockpit error. And I was crashing my plane all the time in my programming class. My cockpit errors were terrible. I'd always forget to do something, and that's what caused the error or the problem. But a slight variation in your focus can change your output from one day to the next. A difference in humidity levels, a difference in one pack of material to the next. So yeah, sometimes you can have some variations from one to the next. Let's see here. Let's close that and look for more questions. LPI is determined by steps per revolution of stepper motors. Okay, so there is a limitation on, and yes, yes, steppers are set by calibration X and Y. And yes, limited by size of steps. Overlapping laser shapes are called a blob. Stepper motors are restricted by the electronic drivers. And I think in the 500 number that I'm coming to, I can't remember if that was something that I read in Lightburn. It's like, okay, well, it only processes up to like 500 LPI, or it doesn't, or it's the output of the control. But I read somewhere and seen somewhere that anything above 500 LPI is a waste of time. I did the job the first time, and then I put the same wood in for a second trial right after the first job. Okay. Depending on it depending on the wood, because like here's one of the maple plaques that I processed. Now, this is solid maple. It's not plywood. But there's a difference between the heartwood and the pulpwood or whatever. And you've got a difference in the grain, and there's going to be a difference in the density there. So even on your plywoods, the plywoods are a veneer with some garbage in the middle and another veneer, but variations in the veneer can cause issues. But if you're talking about just a slight difference, if you're talking about a major difference, now, I'd have to see it to even begin to comprehend, but a slight variation from one output to the next, it could be, material more than anything. I wouldn't expect it to be a laser issue. And then Terry saying, yeah, it could be a belt tension possible. Well, it's funny. I've never messed with the belt tension on this. Came right out of the box. My Rolly worked perfect. Didn't have to do anything. And this is my third Rolly. I've never touched the tension on a belt ever. The only time I've ever had to mess with the tension on a belt was on one open gantry machine, and that was the very first one. And that very first one was a POS, and there was all kind of problems with it. but belt tension could be an issue. I don't know which. You may have told us which laser you're using, but in fact, I think you said you might have said it was the Rolly. But I've never had an issue with this as far as repeatability and cutting and engraving. It's always been consistent. When it's not, it's typically a material issue. Most all standard stepper motors have 200 steps per revolution or 1.8 degree. And what does that translate to as far as a maximum LPI? Because I see what you're saying is 200 steps per revolution. Ply could be a void, glue density, fillers. Yeah, plywood. Yeah, and that's why I really like these new plaques that I'm putting out. The ain't plywood. It's solid wood. You still have issues when you're engraving. You can have that the grains are going to have a difference in the density, and you'll have a difference in how well or how deep it engraves. So, all right, mark this spot, and we're going to move on to the other. Is there anybody any questions on the edit material test or the edit text test? I think I covered everything there. Any questions about that? The LPI would depend on your gear. Okay. Gear size used on the belts. Gotcha. All right. Makes sense. Yep. Okay. All right. So moving on to the edit border. Cut over here and come back to our. So if I look at my preview right now, and down here are two buttons. Right now, there's your enable text and enable border. I had my enable text already turned on. And if I look at my preview, you get just that. But if I turn on my enable border setting and preview, now you can see there's the cut line. It's going to cut that out. So there you open up that and you go in and set your speed and power settings. The last thing I had in here I needed to cut out was 650 mils a minute, 100% power, and 5 passes to get it to cut out. And then over here is where you can save your presets. There's your save button and save presets. But you got preview, frame. And if any of you watched this week's video where I showed you how I set up my material using the framing and using the constant or the laser on constant when framing, man, that's makes framing jobs so much easier. But there you can frame it and you can see your material. And you can see exactly like when you're moving that, you've engraved one and now you want to move it over, hit that frame and have your power, the laser on when framing, and it'll show you, okay, good. It's going to be clear and it's not going to overlap. You're not even having any question about it being an issue. So you can use your frame button, your start button, your pause button, stop. And then here is your save G code. And so there would be, I'm guessing if you had a different computer that didn't have Lightburn on it and you wanted to save this as G code, then you could send it to the other computer or other processor, however you were controlling the other laser, and send the actual G code to your laser that way. But you can have multiple presets and save up, a bunch of different ones. Chris, and I did not catch this, and Chris pointed it out in the stream here. You label your presets and save them, but it does not save the title. So you might say your preset's going to be, for optimum cutting with 10 watt, optimum or engraving with a 10 watt, optimum with the 30 watt. And then those are your base parameters that you've had your best luck with. And then you go in and put in your title, which laser, what speed, and what material. over my head for sure. What part is over your head? Any part of this that we talk about here, or or you talking about the steppers were over your head? Are you lost or confused on anything about this material test? My laser has a red LED light that shows framing or the cuts as it moves, so I don't have to use the real low power to see framing. Yep. And my first POS laser had an LED for framing, and I did like that. But the low power constant on framing, same thing. In fact, it's actually better because the LED source is not the laser, and I've seen some where they actually had to calibrate the LED output. So your LED could be a little bit off, but when you're using the laser for framing, it's going to be exact. Where can I find the spot size and max speed for the Rolly XW? It used to be on the website, but I don't see that there. I was looking for it the other day myself, and it's not there. I can't find it. I think the max speed is 16,000. I think, and the spot size, like I said, and they even had it on the website. It told you what the spot size was on the X, and it told you what the spot size was on the Y. And I have a video. Find your perfect kerf. And let's in fact, we'll use this as an opportunity. At the very beginning, Terry was asking about searching and finding videos on my channel. So let me pull this up and go over here to YouTube. Because if you haven't seen this video, it's definitely worth watching. And if you have seen it and you want to know what the max speed powers, it's in this video because I went to it. I went to the website when I was filming it, and I remember looking it up. My channel, YouTube Studio. Actually, no, I don't want to go to my channel. I want to go to my channel. Go there, and okay, and switch. All right. So Terry was talking about having problems finding videos. This is the channel when you pull it up on YouTube. Let's turn Terry off here. Right here's a magnifying glass. And you just hit that magnifying glass and just search for what you're looking for. Now here, I think the title of the video was Finding Your Perfect Curve or something like that. But I have no idea what exactly it was. But so I'm just going to put in kerf. Kerf. And hit enter. And it's going to find all the videos I've done on kerf. Now, it's funny, and I've told you guys before, if you want to see some funny stuff, go back and watch the videos from the very, very beginning of Hobo, because I was a newbie, didn't know what they was doing. I didn't fully understand kerf and how it worked and what it was. And there was one video, it's like, let's figure out what this is. I have no idea what's happening here. But I have, thank goodness, and I have grown, and the knowledge has been exponential. So, and I love sharing it with you guys. But you want to see some funny stuff, look back at some of those early videos because I had no idea what I was doing. And I'm still learning it today. But finding your curve on a diode. No, I want to find I had one that was a perfect kerf. And I can see what I'm saying now. Well, because I just put in kerf. Let's see. Let's try perfect kerf. Or perfect. Perfect frame. Finding your kerf on the diode. Oh, yeah, that's it. Find your perfect kerf. That's it. So it wasn't in the thumbnail, but it's in the title there. Find your perfect kerf. That video, I'm pretty sure has the specs from the website from Rolly with all of their max speed and powers and spot size, but it's not on their website anymore. I couldn't find it. I was just looking for it this week. But that video shows how to find your perfect kerf. And in that video, I demonstrate, and this only works when you're cutting out straight lines or boxes or cubes. If you're cutting out a box or a cube and you're using slots and tabs, because your X and Y has a different size spot, when you're cutting out those tabs, when you move across the X, your spot's one size. When you come down your Y, it's going to be another. So your spot size is changing as it's cutting out slots and tabs. And if you get you can find a kerf, adding kerf to it, that will make it fit together and be pretty snug. But if you want it to be absolutely perfect, all you have to do is cut it out on a 45-degree angle. So if your laser is never moving on the X and the Y, if it's always moving on a 45, then it's going to have an exact same kerf on every side of your slot or tab. And Leo from Rolly seen that, and he was like, genius. And so I think it's because of the way that the lasers are stacked within the laser module. If you were to rotate those inside the module, so that when it's scanning on an X and Y, it would create a perfectly round kerf, or the kerf would be the same. Still wouldn't be round, but because it's moving on a 45 and it is that ovaloid elliptical shape, the result would be the same. It would be perfect. The X and Y kerf would be the exact same. And that only works when you're doing boxes or doing slots and tabs. Other than that, then you just have to find a happy medium and try and put it together. Let's see here. There's my spot. Question, comments. My laser has we talked about that one. And we talked about that one. I didn't mark my spot. Have you mentioned you need a separate test for each kind of material? Oh yeah. Well, that's kind of what this is about. This is one material and it's 4 different tests. And I introduced 3 new materials on Hobo with Wood this week: the hard maple, the walnut, and the basswood. And those were all new to me. And every time I get new material, it's a new test. So yeah, that's kind of what spurred this topic up. Is you're always needing to test. No matter how long you're going to be lasering, you should never stop testing. There are going to be some things that's kind of like, okay, well, yeah, that works on this. I know it's going to work here, but you're never going to be done with testing. 30,000 is the max speed, I believe, for the Rolly. I didn't think it was that high. I thought it was only 18,000. Max speed will only be reached for long cuts. It'll never get to that speed during, short, yes. I'm in the process of adding a beam combiner on one of my CO2s to get LED crosshairs. I keep forgetting to change the power for framing. Yeah, that could be a problem. For a YouTube search, place a paragraph of keywords in the description. The shape of the beam is caused by how the beam is generated and passes through the diode. Yep. Yeah, and the fact that they've got and you don't have a 30-watt laser is not one diode. What is it? Six diodes that they have to collimate and get focused in one point. Oh yeah, a clean machine will laser different than a dirty one, and that's yes, one of many variables. How clean is it? How well has it been maintained? How many hours are on it? The tons and tons and tons of factors. Tons of factors. Yeah, on average, one diode's 5 watts on average, because you got some out there, what's 2.5 watts? I think you got some really small ones out there too. I believe. All right, now there was a question early on, if you're still here, about how I do my finishing. And before I do go to that, does anybody have any questions about the testing material? Did I completely lose anybody? Anybody got anything? They're like, hey, wait a minute, I didn't quite get that. And I don't know if you guys can hear it, but I got a thunder boomer starting up out here. So if the dog comes gets on my lap in a minute, don't be surprised. All right. So I don't see any questions populating. That's good. That means I did a good job. All right. Marking that spot. So early in the stream, I was asked about finishing tips, and she's getting closer. And she hears that thunder. She comes getting over there. Yeah, Andy says, please hit that like button. Yeah, guys, if you're enjoying this stream and you're getting some stuff out of it, even if you've already subscribed to the channel, hit that like button. That help all those things, all the positive things you can do, and believe it or not, even the negative things you do, it helps the channel. If you think I'm full of crap and you want to be one of those trolls and you want to just make nasty comments, I don't care. And you're still helping me by doing that. A comment's a comment. And so hit that like button. Like, share, and subscribe. So this is a piece of the walnut. In fact, this one is what I did some of the test on. And that's the unfinished side of the walnut. And as I mentioned, the walnut, if it's a large engraving, I wish I do and I don't. I hate seeing people doing this to hide their face or their eyes to make it focus on this. So it's, danged if you do, danged if you don't. But depending on your design, the walnut may or may not be the most ideal material for a black engraving, because the wood's dark. This has got a finish on it now, so you've got some decent contrast going on there. But what I find the walnut is best suited for, and what really pops, is when you do the color fill. And that was brought up early in the question, early in the stream. So this is a piece of the walnut that I used my pins. In fact, I hadn't even put it up yet. I used my paint pen and put a lacquer finish on it. And that pops out and looks really good. I like that. I love that glossy finish on that maple. No, this is the walnut. Maple walnut. The walnut. And that's just a gold paint pen. How did I get that? Well, first thing I did was I engraved it. I used the speed and power settings that I found here. And since I knew I was going to be doing a color fill, I went with a really deep engraving. In fact, I had this on the laser when I was helping Terry out, and I took it off and showed it to him. And I had a 1.2 millimeter pocket, 1.2 millimeter depth on the engraving. Once I had that pocket engraved, I cleaned it up real good, sanded it nice and smooth, Try not to be too aggressive. Take as little as possible off of it, but get a good, nice, because the walnut is very, very porous. The grains. In fact, you can see some variations in deviations. That's where the pores of the grain. I haven't got a final finish on this to make it slick. But the pores, it's very, very open. So once I got it off the laser, I put a light sanding on it to get the soot and the dirt and get it just a good clean finish. Then I took it to my paint booth and I put a lacquer coat on it and put a second lacquer coat on it. Then once I had my lacquer finish on there, then I got my paint pen. And I took my paint pen and I just went around it and filled everything in that I want to fill in. I didn't worry about it being perfect. I made sure it was exactly where I wanted it to be and it was filled appropriately. Then I let it dry and let it shrink. Then I put a second coat of my gold paint pen on, let that dry. Then once that's good and dry, I got my orbital sander back out and sanded that face smooth again and took practically all of the lacquer off of it back down to the natural wood again. But because I'm using that DA that's larger than my engraving, it's staying right on top of the surface the entire time. So all of my paint in my fill stays there. Once I got that all nice and smooth and I looked and everything looked good, I didn't have any blowouts or pullouts on that. I went back with my lacquer again and sealed everything again, let that dry. And because I had sanded it down to the bare wood again, I put a coat of lacquer on it, let that dry. That first coat of lacquer raises the grain on the wood. And then I took I think it's 320 sandpaper and knocked down the high edges off of the grains where it raised the grains. Another coat of lacquer, let that dry, brief sanding, another coat of lacquer. And I'll do that 2 or 3 more times. And once I do that, those little dimples, the dimples you see there in the gloss, those dimples will go away. I'll get that completely slick and filled, but it'll be multiple applications of lacquer and sanding between each one. Let's see here. I pre-ordered the Galp. Congratulations. I started to say I wish I could do that, but the next major investment I want to do is a resaw. From what I'm learning here, I'm having some really good success with these plaques. Last week, you guys bought up every one of those exotic hardwoods before I even got off the live stream. And now that you guys know that Hobo with Wood has got the maple, the walnut, and the basswood, and the basswood has been my most impressive. The piece that I've been most impressed with, the result of the engraving on that basswood, shocking. I just did not expect to have that good of a result. But I want to show you this squirrel. Let's see here. There, and I processed these plaques this week. I worked Monday and Tuesday processing those plaques. And where are you at? I put you in downloads. You ain't showing up. There's more than one way to skin a cat. Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding. There and there. All right. So close that and turn Robert off and switch. Now, I was fortunate enough to go up to West Penn Hardwoods, and Ed went, and Dwayne was there. And Dwayne's the one that seen the basswood and pointed out the basswood. I had no idea that it was an even option that they had available up there. But we were talking about, 4-quarter board, or, a solid inch, or even had 5-quarter boards. And I needed to have that resawn. I needed to get it split. and then I could cut it down in sections and get the blanks and then start creating the plaques. Well, if I was able to resaw it myself, I could have saved a tremendous amount of material, because I want to show you this picture. This photograph is after I picked up my thickness planer. The thickness planer is not in the photograph. I picked it up and moved it out of the way. And this is, I process all this out on the front porch. And this is the result of processing. This was after all three materials. I've done the basswood, the maple, and the walnut. And this is what I had left on my front porch. Oh, wrong way. That is one big pile of shavings. All of that, if I had it redesigned, there's the beginnings of the plaques, but that's waste. That's a lot of waste. So the next thing, if these continue to sell well, the next thing I would like to have would be to have a resaw bandsaw that would allow me to resaw my material to the size that I need and minimize my waste like that, because that was a lot of money that just got thrown in the trash can. Go away. Did I hear correctly when you said that the spot size is smaller on the smaller the laser, the smaller size? The lower the lower the power, the smaller the spot size. I don't care whose laser it is. And that's because to get the higher powers, they're actually just stacking more diodes on top of another and then focusing all those into one spot. And the more lasers that you stack that you have to focus to a point, they're going to occupy more space. If you've got one single diode that comes down, it's one spot size and it ain't round. You got 4 of them stacked together to get your 20 watt, then it's, they get, and I've used this a ton. Your lasers come together and focus down to a point. Well, the more lasers that you've got to come to a point, the bigger that point's going to be. So yeah, the higher the power, the larger the spot size. Lacquer. This is just lacquer, and I'm not done with it. I'll do. And this is trash, but I'm gonna make it really, really pretty. I can set, back there or whatever. But I'll sand this down and get it smooth. Hit it again with lacquer, sand it down, hit it again, and I'll keep doing that until all those dimples are gone and it's nice and flat, and I've got a good, consistent finish on the face of it. Yeah, any of the dark woods they're not ideal for engraving, like the it's over yonder. The Pal Rosa looks good, but if you try to do, and there was some people, I don't remember what species it was. It might have been walnut that somebody got somewhere else. That they were trying to do a really delicate font on the walnut, and it didn't show up. One, they probably didn't do the line after fill. Doing the line after fill will make that pop. It will add definition to any engraving you're doing. Adding that sub layer and adding a line after the fill will create definition. But on the very, very dark woods, a small, dainty, pretty little thing doesn't show up that great. Thank you, Terry. Thank you very much. I'm at the fact the I'm taking it down to 220. 220 is my lowest grit in between applications. you can use a first coat of sand and seal to start with. Yeah, that was a lot of waste. A lot of waste. A lot of people who sell products forget to take into account the waste when pricing. Yeah. Yeah, I don't. I look at what my total invoice was when I bought the material. This is, I paid X hundreds of dollars. And how many plaques did I get out of that material? And then divide the number of plaques into my total cost. And that accounts for my waste. But yeah. And I want to, I challenge you to find something. Let's see here. These are two of the walnut plaques. Now, before I send these out, before anybody buys them, they'll go through a final sanding. But these are solid pieces of walnut. There are no glue ups in my plaques. I did that early on with some maple. That's a lot of work. More work than I want to do. I'm lazy because that was a lot of manual work. I don't mind using the tools and letting the tools do the work, but I don't want to sit there and glue up, put in clamps and squeeze up. If I can sit here and take it and run it through the planer, run it through the router, I'm not physically having to do a whole lot of anything, and I'm good at that, not doing anything. But go online and you look for a 5x7 walnut plaque anywhere for sale, and you'll see that they're all glue ups. I could not find a single 5x7 walnut plaque that was a solid piece of wood. Everyone I found were glue ups, and they were as high or higher than what I'm selling the solid pieces for. And why is that important? If you're laser engraving, you don't want glue ups. When you're laser engraving, if you've got that glue up and you're engraving along, as soon as that laser hits that line where it's glued up, it's either not doing anything or it does something completely totally different. A lot of times it doesn't do anything, and you've got a defined line. And even if you don't get a variation in your engraving, when you just look at the piece, you don't have the continuity. See, that grain's consistent. With a glue up, you'll have, in fact, just for grins and giggles, switch. We're at Google 5x7, not S7, 5x7 walnut plaque. Images. See there? See that variation? The whole side of left side of that is a different piece of wood. And they're wanting $11 a piece for them. What size? Yeah, it's 5x7, and they want $11 a piece for them, and it's a glue up. JP's, there's 14, and that's a cherry. Walnut finish. Now that right there, that would make me question: is it walnut or is it something pine that's been stained walnut? Because this is walnut finish. It may not be a walnut plaque. But all of the plaques that I found, they were all glue ups. And if you look right there, that one looks like it's glued up right in the center there. But mine are not glue ups. Mine are solid pieces of material. Premium product. Premium product. Kathy, you are most welcome. Optically aligning laser beams with other lasers so they can occupy this exact same spot is expensive. You could do it, but the cost would be much, much more. Yeah. I put the 10, 20, 30 watt spot size in the same chat up above the frame, or up above from the, okay, in the chat. Okay. I put the 10 and 20 watt spot size in the chat up above from the internet. Okay, you didn't find it on the website, but found it on the internet. As Chicago Bob says, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and go gold. Go gold. Go over to patreon.com/hobo with wood. Become a regular supporter of the channel. As a gold patron, you have access to all of my digital files on hobowithwood.com for free. You get them all for free. I ask that you don't go over there and download $500 worth of files after signing up and be like John. We won't call him out by his last name, but I had one jerk do that. That jerk's name was John. He went in, signed up, downloaded all the files, and canceled his sponsorship. He was a jerk. As a woodworker, I have noticed that many people using lasers tend to not to make use of veneering. Yeah, it saved a load of money using MDF as a substrate instead of solid pieces of exotic. Yeah, but I don't like MDF. MDF is very, very popular. There's a manufacturer that here in North Carolina that a lot of you guys use, Smoky Hill. I was excited to be able to look at their stuff and possibly feature it on the channel and talk about what they had and had to offer, but it just didn't work out. So we don't do that. But I think 99% of the stuff that they have is all MDF. It's MDF that they've got some kind of pattern that they've printed on it, or they've glued to it on some type of veneer of some type, and creates all those. And they have some really neat pieces, but MDF is glued up sawdust, so it's just not the same quality. Can you create some nice looking pieces? Yeah, especially if you're going to do your own MDF and then do your own veneers. But that's, I just told you a minute ago, I'm lazy. I ain't gonna work out hard, and I'll put up the quality and the difference in the feel of this solid walnut versus a piece of MDF that's got a veneer on it, or a cheaper piece of wood that's been stained walnut. The feel is they're not comparable, and that's the average consumer can feel that. They don't know that's what they're picking up on, but they can pick up on and pick it up and oh wow, that's cheap, you know. You just get a better quality product working with real hardwoods, and you ain't got to worry about it getting wet and falling apart. And I think I mentioned to it last time you were here, Led Zepp. I love the name. I love the name. Yeah, bandsaws are awesome, but bandsaws will my brother's missing the tip of 2 fingers from bandsaw. Bandsaws will get you faster than about anything. You gotta be careful with bandsaws. Do you have any information on engraving mugs with a handle on the rotary or of the lasermatic? I can't figure it out. There are some videos out there, and from depending on the size of your mug, you may need the drop down. There's a drop down accessory for the rollies that will allow for extra clearance, and I think that was specifically for the larger mugs with the handles. But I've got some rotary videos out there. I haven't done any with the handle. I don't do a whole lot of mugs there. My local market is flooded with mug laser engravers, and I'm not taking anything away from that, but the majority of those people who are doing it, they do it because they've got the ability to download an image and just burn it on. There's no skill involved in it at all. And I that's what I try to do every week. Is I try to challenge myself. Like, this, you know, uh, finding the right depth to do the color fill and make sure that, because I this was my second attempt at this. First attempt at it, it didn't work. Uh, but taking a mug, clamping it in a rotary, hit a button, and you're done. Okay, great. Well, you didn't really do anything. And so, and now, uh, talking with Terry this week, he's got a deal to where he's talking about working with a vendor or a company that he's going to be potentially selling some of these things, mugs to, and has a chance to make some really good money doing it. Well, that's not what I do. Every week I'm here trying to teach you guys how to do things. And, once you learn how to do a mug, I can't keep showing you how to do a mug every week, because once you know how to do it, you know how to do it. So I'm trying to find new content, new ideas, and push your own boundaries, push your own comfort level with what you work with and how you work with. So, but mugs just aren't, and the rotary for that matter, not something that I'm a big proponent of. Let's see here. Chicago Bob says, well worth it. And he's referring to the gold level patron. Well worth it. There are some good reasons why veneer is sneered at, not just in laser work. Yeah. Now, there are some advantages to veneer. You can create a lot of unique things. Veneer is its own talent in and of itself. And when we were up at West Bend the other day, they had veneers in there that were available, and they were like, less than paper thin. They were extremely fragile veneers, and you could see because of how thin they were, and it was all from one piece of lumber, book matching and creating unique shapes. And I forget it. One of you guys tell me, book matching is when you take those two pieces and you butt them up together and it's a mirror image of each other. But then when you are really, really good, you can do it where it's four pieces. It's really crazy. It's got a center point that's a focal point, and these are book matched and these are book matched, but they're also, and that, well, I forget what that's called, but that is wicked pretty and takes a lot of skill to do that. So I don't frown on using veneers. I just frown on using MDF. And you'd only need in some of the furniture they do the veneers, the high end veneers on top of plywood, because you need the strength of the plywood, and the plywood gives you, the plywood's not going to want to twist and bend with you over time or warp with you. So they'll do a plywood and then put a veneer on it to make it look pretty. When I think of veneer, I immediately think of IKEA. Well, and that would be a veneer on MDF. But like I said just now, a lot of times you do it on plywoods, and it's going to be a stronger, sturdier piece and be less tendency to want to flex or warp over time. Book matching and waterfall. Okay. Yeah, I know book matching is just two pieces. Waterfall might be the four pieces. Yeah. And Three Rusty Nails makes a good point here. I've not done it, but veneer is as art is cool, but Three Rusty Nails, veneers are great for inlays. I gotta have the right veneers, and you gotta have the right touch. I've done inlays. This is just one of them I've got. That was, I think, walnut and maple, but that was not done with veneer. That was, I think, probably a 3 millimeter piece of walnut or maple. So I engraved a pocket that was at least 2.5 millimeters deep in the walnut, and then cut that out of the maple in 3 millimeter maple, and then pressed that in there, and then sanded off the high and left that. But veneers, you wouldn't have, you wouldn't be that thick. But because it's not that thick, you have to be careful that you're not sanding it off and tearing up stuff. So yeah, but it is, as Armistead says, veneer is cool as art, and it takes a special talent and skill to really make them pretty. All right, guys, if I didn't get any emails or questions from anybody saying, hey, I've got a file I need help with. So I'm guessing we ain't got to worry about that. But is there any questions about what we looked at today? We're at the 2-hour mark. We're going to call it. Led Zepp says, I use my own veneer and I do use plywood. Yeah, I would do veneer on plywood all day long before I would want to do veneer on MDF. And I know, like I said, some of that stuff looks pretty. I just don't like building out of MDF. As Chicago Bob says, IKEA. I don't want to build on the MDF. Questions, comments? I'm looking forward very soon to getting the Cubico. The Cubico is the small CNC. If you haven't seen that yet, Clack has got a really good, he's actually got 2 videos now out on the Cubico. In fact, there's a difference in the pronunciation. I'm saying Cubico because it's kind of cube shaped, and it's Cubico, Cubiko. And hey, there's Steve there now. Hey, Steve. In fact, if you email me, I'll send you a link. You pop in here. Clack was talking about, and I think he called it and Steve might even know if it's, but I think Clack said he wasn't sure, but I think he said Cubiko, like it's a Japanese pronunciation, Cubiko. But I said Cubico. But I'm looking forward to my Cubicos getting here very soon, because Clack he had a prototype and tested it and was really happy with what it was. I mean, and it's a beginner CNC. But now he has received his production. He actually has they did the mass production ones, and he's received it, and he's got a video on the production piece. So they're this close to shipping out all of the Kickstarters, and I've got 2 coming. And I mentioned to him on his last video, I've got 2 coming, and I went with the upgraded spindle to where I think it spins at twice the speed. I think the base is a 10,000 RPM. I got the 20,000 RPM spindle, and I got a laser that goes with the Cubico. So you can take the spindle out and put a laser in, and you can engrave the piece that you just created with the CNC. And I'm going to be giving one of those away. I bought these. I'm not as fortunate as Clacky is. As Steve likes to say, Clack gets all the toys. Let's see here. I'm just looking. I don't know if I'm hearing my emails go off. I don't know if no. Okay. I just want to make sure if Steve sent me an email to jump in here, but I don't see a link or a neat request. But I bought mine. I bought mine through the Kickstarter program, and I'm going to keep one for me, and then I give one away. And from what I understand, Clack and Steve will be giving away a Cubico as well. So there's 3 of them that are going to be given away on 3 different channels. And so I mentioned to him about, you're doing a collaboration. When I get mine in and get ready to give one away, maybe do some cross promotion with them. So I'm excited about that coming in. And the work area of that thing is it's not big. I mean, it's about a little bit bigger than an index card. But the reason I'm excited about it is because I've got a great big X carve over in the other room, and the learning curve of learning how to use the CNC and the techniques and making sure you use your probes, get your 0 point exactly right, and you're not sending a bit through the machine or down into your spoil board and breaking stuff off, moving too fast, and you tearing up stuff. Those great big CNCs, you spend 20-30 minutes setting up your material, and it takes you 30 seconds to ruin it because you did something wrong. Well, using this little bit of Cubico to learn how to use the software and use the technology and make sure you get all of your routine correct. And if you're wasting anything, then you've wasted a little bitty piece, and it takes seconds to reset and go back into the next piece. So that's why I'm really excited about this. I'm not excited about what I'm going to be able to make with it, but it's going to be a perfect tool to learn to use a CNC. So I'm excited about that. Steve says, sent me different Steve. I seen your email when I was looking to see if the other Steve if Ventari sent me an email. And Ventari says, yeah, Southern pronouncement. Hey, that works the other way around too, but now yours is pretty good. Because you're a Midwesterner. You're not a Yankee, right? You're a Midwesterner. And Midwesterners, they don't sound that funny. Irish can have a drawl. We can sound really funny down here. But yeah, South is the dialects in the South can vary greatly from one county to the next. It's crazy. Yeah, there it is. Clack gets all the cool toys. Yep. And I don't know if you've seen it or not, but one of the viewers on my channel, we were talking about it the other day, says, yeah, he said Clack's kind of like, oh fudge, I can't remember his name now. What was the guy's name? Y'all said it in stream. He's but wait, there's more. Oh phooey. I forget his name now, but the pitch man. But wait, there's more. The ShamWow dude or whoever. Says, sometimes when you're watching Clack, it's like, but wait, there's more. Yes, but Clack gets all the cool toys. If you don't win here, go there. I missed something there. Yeah, Billy Mays. Billy Mays. And I didn't say it. I just laughed at it. But someone commented and said, "Yeah, he's the Billy Mays of laser and Billy Mays of woodworking laser tools." But wait, there's more. Robert, I've got your email, but I haven't opened it yet. Not something I just said that if Ventari wanted to send me an email, I'd send him a link and he could actually jump in the stream and say, hey to everybody. That's the only reason I typically don't even have my email turned on for this. All right. I'll check it out just as soon as I get off here. And if it was something you wanted to bring into here, I apologize. But we're already over 2 hours. We're going to wrap this up and call it. I am looking forward, though, to, and in fact, I meant to ask him if he knew when, I had any idea when the shipping would begin, but I have not seen the shipping dates. But I'm pretty sure they're projected for early May, and he's already got his. And Steve, have you got yours? He said you were getting one. Have you got yours yet? Chicago Bob, thank you for your gift this week. It is greatly appreciated. It helped get this done. Greatly appreciated, sir. Greatly appreciated. So, like I said, Clack did a video. He's got the production model out and using it. and he talks about the pros and the cons, because there's still some small problems with it, because it's a small, fun toy, but it's going to be a great tool to learn with. And Steve says, yeah, he got his that arrived this week, just unboxed it a day ago. Cool. Very good. Excellent. All right, guys, I'm out of here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for hanging out with me on this Saturday afternoon. I'm going to get out of here and go fix me some kebabs. I got some kebabs on sale last night, and I'm going to go have some kebabs. Bless you all for being here. Thank you for supporting Hobo with Wood. I don't know what I'm going to do next week. I am going to go get more exotics. I'm going to go get more Osage orange. I'm going to go get, because the Osage orange, oh, man. Where is it? For those that didn't see it, this is the Osage orange that I did the Gadsden flag in, and that is gorgeous. Gorgeous. And I'm going to get more of the Osage orange and process those into the plaques, because if for nothing else, they're ideal for this. The coloring is ideal. And I even played with the idea of because there's some green hardwoods out there, like not green as in not dried, but actually have a green hue to them. And I thought about doing a green inlay for the grass, like the Gadsden flag. But I'll be getting more of the Osage orange this week. Actually, next week, and processing it for the website. So I'll be getting some more exotics and offering more exotic plaques. So you'll have some more fun stuff to play with. Thank you for watching. Thank you for hanging out. And I'll see you in the next live stream or the next video. I'm Hobo with Wood. I'm out.